Alright guys, this is going to be a little install video on the wiring kit that comes with my alternators. I've been asked for a video instead of the pictures that I've had previously a few times, so I've got a car in here in the shop that we're doing it with, and figured that'd be a good opportunity. So I'll do an install video here with some cutscenes, and hopefully this makes some of the installs a little bit easier. We'll start here with what comes in the kit. You're going to have this here, which is your main power wire. This end attaches to the alternator. Got your fuse, 200 amp mega fuses inside of there. This side will ultimately end up attaching to the fuse box. This wire here is going to be used between the fuse box and the battery. This is obviously ground. This can be attached one of two ways. You can either go from alternator to chassis, or alternator to battery, or you can go, engine to chassis. That's the way that we do it a lot of times. In the new kits, I'm actually now including this wire, which is going to go from the battery to the chassis. So the new way that I'll be recommending with the new kits will be with this to go alternator to battery, and this battery to chassis. And then you're going to have battery post. This right here is what's going to end up going on the battery sensing wire. That is, I've already started on this actually a little bit. I pulled the fuse box off, but that's your stock charge cable, fusible link. This wire here is the battery sensing wire. We're going to snip that out, attach this, and this ends up, attaching onto the post. This end and the heat shrink that's always come in my kits is going to end up being for this wire. You're gonna have to cut this wire off. This is to your starter. And then the one other piece I'm going to start adding is this bolt. This bolt will thread onto that boss on the back cover of the alternator, and that will be used to allow you to attach this ground cable to the alternator more easily. So older kits that don't have this wire, still the recommended method is either taking this from the alternator to the chassis, or chassis to the block, and both of those do the same thing. And so let's get started. Okay, so usually the first place I start is you can unclip the box. I usually do, just to pull it up out of the way and give you a little bit more room to work with, but that's up to you. But unclip the box. Obviously, before you start anything, you should unhook your battery. So, I take the battery connection completely off. You're going to want to unhook the other end of this charge cable, off of the alternator. First place that I usually start is, as you can see, I have cut the starter cable off of this factory battery terminal. You won't be reusing any of these parts. Those are trash. The little green wire that I showed you earlier gets snipped right up out of the fusible link. You're going to crimp the eyelet that's supplied on, and it's also a glued heat shrink crimp. So make sure once you crimp that on, you can use either a torch or heat gun or whatever you want to shrink it. Right here where we cut the starter cable off is where the supplied end goes on. You're just going to cut it off, strip it back, put the supplied end on. As you can see, I have a set of hydraulic crimpers. That's what all of your crimps look like in the cable kit underneath the heat shrink. I realize not everybody has hydraulic crimpers, or not a lot of people do, so either, if you do that, that works fine. Obviously, you know what to do. If you don't, you can typically use a set of Kleins like these. They're not made for this type of end, but if you use the non-insulated portion of this crimper and hit it like in 2 spots from 2 angles, that'll usually do the trick on one of those, and you should not have an issue. Once you get that crimped on, whatever method you use, or you can try to solder it in. You can definitely do that if you want. It's kind of up to you. But those are the ways to do it. Once you've got this end on, the other thing I'll say, take note, is the way that this exits the harness. Make sure that you put it on in a way so that this end lays down like so, upside down, or however you want to look at it. I guess that's technically upside down. That way you can stack the other wires that you will on it, and they're not going to have interference. So once you've got that crimped on, you're going to take the heat shrink that's included, put that on and shrink it. All right, we've now got this piece heat shrunk on. As you can see, when it heat shrinks, you will see it push glue out. That's what you want to see. The next step that we will go through, you got to decide if you want to keep this wire or not. You can either leave it in there and tuck it off to the side. It's kind of a pain to strip out, but you definitely can take the loom apart and strip it out. If you decide that you don't want it anymore, you're never going to use it again, you can cut it off, right here at the edge of the loom on both sides. Kind of up to you. In this car, I'm going to be removing it. So yeah, I will see you when we're at the next step. All right, so what I've done is I pulled the charge wire out of the harness, stripped it out, put a new piece of loom over what's remaining in the harness that plugs into there. I've also fished the main charge wire down through the top. You can see like so. And it comes in the front of the alternator, attaches like that. Now we'll move to the top, and I'll show you what we do with the fuse box and the rest of it to get it to stay sitting like that. Alright, so when you're back up top here, before you start putting all this stuff back together, one of the reasons you pulled the box out, or the main reason you pull the box out, you want to pull the box out, pull it far forward as you can, clear some of the space out, because you need to get access to the boss on the back of your alternator there. And you're going to want the cable to face, basically up and at a slight angle, maybe 11 o'clock if you're looking at the back of the alternator. And that's your long ground strap. That's the one that's going to come up to the battery. So, all right, now that we have the ground cable connected, we clip the box back in. You can kind of see the order in which things go back on in. You're going to want the ground cable, on that side. The battery cable, not the battery cable, the alternator cable. Alternator cable you're going to want underneath this. This basically sits back in factory fashion. The fuse box will end up sitting basically exactly right there on top of the alternator. You do want to make sure, I think it kind of goes without saying, but you can look in there and see that I have this now pulled over to the side so that it's off the side of the pulley, completely out of the way of the pulley. You should be able to see right there how that looks. Alright, so now we're attached all in here. This is how it basically should end up looking. Alright, the lead coming from your alternator will be flipped upside down in there. Then your small wire right here that we put that lead on, you'll stick in the middle. And then this lead here will be on top, in place on top. They all fit inside of there like so. As I mentioned earlier, starter cable That one's flipped upside down, and then that's so this one can be on top and they don't have interference. We're almost done. Next we will attach the final ground here. Basically what it's going to look like is we're going to utilize the stock bolt there. It's going to piggyback on top, and then the other ground will reach up and we'll attach, we'll pull the slack out of it, and we'll attach to the other side. Alright guys, now that we got the ground cables hooked up, this one, remember, goes from the back of the alternator on that boss up to here, and this little guy here, bridge is right there. This way the alternator is grounded battery, chassis is grounded directly to the battery with an upgraded wire, and that's it. That's what it will end up looking like. So I hope this clears up a lot of the questions, concerns, and helps you guys out moving forward with how to install our pre-made Big 3 cable upgrade. Thanks.